All right, so today I'm joined by the Gemini mastermind who literally saved me. I met you through Aquarian Insight, and you've healed so much for me on my journey. You've been my friend since 2016. You've witnessed a few of my spiritual and mental breakdowns of me being afraid of the spiritual results of studying astrology. This is Archangel Michael, the peace dealer, and he's joining me for this Jupiter in Gemini. My goal is to interview as many Geminis and air
Oh,
placements as
nice.
I can during this transit. So, Michael, what got you started with astrology?
Um, well, first of all, I thank you for having me. And I always like when the air trinity gets connected, like the Aquarian connected Gemini to Libra, that's really dope. I've seen different versions of that. And I like to think um the more I kind of recap that initially when I'd answer that question, I'd say that, I got my chart read and it piqued a lot of interest to
Yeah,
just learn
you
about.
showed me Sensei Christopher Witecki. Is that who
Right.
read your chart?
Yes, he and the Leo King when he was David Palmer astrology or
Nice.
yeah. But now I feel like the more I kind of think about it, I really do feel like I got jumped by the planets. Like they brought me in and then just gave me a vicious beating and I was part of the gang now and I'm grateful. I'm
Yeah,
grateful.
I what my Leo sister showed me is that we take turns over lifetime. So like this was your lifetime to be activated by the Leo King and Chris Witecki, but in a past life, you were the one who activated both of those people.
Now that you say that, that's mind-blowing because my south node of past life is Leo and the Leo King and Chris Witecki are both Leo risings.
Whoa.
Yeah. And before that, I was, studying theology because I didn't know about horoscopes and astrology. And I just wanted to speak truth. And I knew about Myers-Briggs, but it just didn't feel complete like a personality profiler system to me. But it was still a huge leap forward compared to before. And then, I kind of in studying the Bible, got a little bit disillusioned about certain dogmatic teachings. And that's what opened me up to really start like going on YouTube. And then that was where I would see like Astrolata, KRS, Marie Moore, just people like doing horoscopes for signs or pulling tarot cards to do it. But once I joined Soul Garden and I eventually got like my first reading from both of them, it was the first time I was introduced to the concept of someone reading a natal chart and me having like different planets and signs. And for people who've never met me before to like not only like speak exactly what I'm going through, but even years later now, it's still like so accurate. Everything that they said would happen has happened. So that just burned uh fever in me to or passion in me to just like learn as much as I could. And now we're here.
Yeah, I mean, what one thing that I was able to really lean on you for was Black Moon Lilith. That was the series
Right.
that I kept going to, and I wanted to know everyone's placement because I have Black Moon Lilith in the 10th house. So it's
Yeah.
like, I guess my career is meant to work with Black Moon Lilith. And Sensei did say, oh, don't work with her. She's a dark energy. And I'm Venus ruled, but it's like, well, she's in my 10th house. I think I'm supposed to. So
Right.
what started that series for you?
I that was very mind blowing. What really kicked off my channel when was recorded in California the short time I was there. I had made the initial moon in the signs, Mercury in the signs, Venus in the signs, Mars in the sign, and then when I moved back to Texas, I was working with a Libra photographer, and he had suggested we redo those, but just with better quality. But I didn't realize that people didn't care about the quality. And I wish I didn't delete it because those are fucking golden. But it gives me an opportunity to redo it. And Lilith was the first one that I kind of restarted with. And I did not expect that series to be as watched as it was, or for people to even resonate with it, which was a really great insight to me as well. And I want to revisit it. I did that like a decade ago, but like, yeah, I like the way she kind of, told you not to mess with her, because I think that's a reflection of how society treats that aspect of the feminine or woman in essence too.
Oh my gosh, you were so right. You were so right.
Like, no, that's no, don't do that. That's not
And
lighter.
that's her testing me too. She's like, how much do you want to work with me? Like,
Right, that too. Right. That's really
so,
my understanding of her has definitely shifted.
wait, what'd you say?
My understanding of her has definitely shifted since the time I recorded it, but still kind of aligned.
What would you say has changed?
I looked at it more as just an asteroid versus now a point that could be a conduit, like an actual entity that expresses itself. And I'm gonna come back with the Juno series because of learn like women who have Juno on their sun, moon, and rising, you can tell. Like that's the queen goddess signature. And it doesn't have to be exactly conjunct. So I want to approach Lilith like that because like Kim Kardashian has it on her sun, Mia Khalifa has it on her sun. Like you could definitely tell. And yeah, it makes me look at it with a different respect.
Wow. Do you
Yeah.
mind sharing where is your Black Moon Lilith, or is that under wraps?
No, that's cool. I'm experimenting more for sure. What is truly accurate? I'm settled for both. Like I give it a range, but I want to see if the mean one is more accurate or the true one is more accurate. I use the true calculations. My true is in Sag and my mean is in Scorpio. But yeah, I just kind of
Wow.
want to experiment on that for now.
Yeah, I just checked my Juno and it's in my 10th house. So it's like it
With
might
Lilith.
with Lilith.
Nice.
And let me see. I believe that they're an orb.
I
Yeah,
have a
Juno's.
theory with Juno and Lilith together that's especially in a woman that represents someone who can fuse the archetypes and they're both like wifey and mistress. Like
Yeah.
they can do that to a partner or they can like understand both instead of it being at odds. Just pretty cool.
Yeah, this is something that I've heard too. And I don't know if you've heard of Larry Hurd or Mr. Fingers, but he's a Gemini mastermind. And one of my favorite albums by him is Cerebral Hemispheres. And who
Wow.
better to make that album than Mr.
Yeah.
Fingers? 2018, I haven't stopped listening to it. And last year I was the top like 1% of listeners to him.
Nice.
So there's this element of polarity, and I hope you could speak to mutable air and the
Yeah,
mutable energy.
absolutely. Okay. A classic example of this, and that's what really helped me respect Gemini a lot more because Gemini reminds people of the duality and the nuance of life. Like things aren't necessarily black and white. So it's hard for people to understand why Kendrick Lamar told Drake, I hate the way that you talk, I hate the way that you walk, I hate the way that you dress. But then he also said on Meet the Grams, I don't have a hating bone in my body. And it's, stuff like that calls Gemini a walking contradiction, but both could be true. It's not necessarily um just double speak. So I like to think we can't necessarily perceive beyond the third dimension. And there is that metaphysical aspect as well that we have to relate with. There's the yin, there's the yang. And um
And what a
we kind
perfect
of
thing for eighth house of Scorpio to say. Scorpio who's so black and white.
Yeah, extreme, very extreme, which thanks for inserting that too, because that kind of literally led to kind of pointing that out as far as like not just transforming out of that, bringing light to that. But I'm glad you brought up the Scorpio in the eighth house because the fixed sign of Scorpio can get so stuck in pride to where it is predictable, keeping up the energy versus transforming energy. Of course, they all work together really well. But I really do appreciate the question because it kind of represents that sword that just kind of cuts everything but splits the spirit and soul or splits the lies from the falsities. Um, and in typical Gemini fashion, I've said a lot of words, but
No, because I'm very visual, and as soon as you said sword, I'm thinking Archangel Michael, which is, the word. Or what do you think of the sword of Archangel Michael? I want to know your take on it.
It is a sword that cuts soul and spirit and, slices and divides truth from the lies
So
amongst things.
I have a question now because my husband, he's Pluto ruled, but he's, I think I'm on Pluto's good side. What would you say about a Chiron and Gemini placement?
Okay, yeah. Chiron and Gemini is, the more I consider it, grossly underrated. Uh Kendrick, Nicki Minaj, and Drake have that. I think it's 86 and like 87. And Chiron and Aries triggers people. Chiron and Gemini is like the next step. Because we don't live in a perfect world, it's impossible for Chiron and Geminis to have a conversation and it not like grate on people like on a chalkboard, because Chiron and Gemini will just infuse vulnerabilities through truths that one hasn't accepted that they need to hear. It's literally healing communication. So Chiron Aries is raw spirit healing. Chiron Taurus is natural healing. So they have the tactile ability to literally heal. And then Chiron and Gemini is now communication healing. It's angelic healing. But a lot of people are evil. And I hate to say that, that's a gross generalization, but there's evil in a lot of people. And when you speak the truth, they hate that. So it ends up being a tool for exorcism just through the word. And that for the native can have people feel vulnerable about expressing the truth. Because with the Chiron and Gemini, every time they've expressed the truth, especially if they have an opposite Saturn, it's been associated with shame, with guilt. Don't say that. Don't say that. And then they have to like overcome that and just learn, would you rather have yourself be triggered and not trigger other people, or be good with yourself and trigger the fuck out of other people?
Hmm.
And
What would you say about Pluto? I want to go through all the main
please, that's
planets
so
masters.
fun.
Pluto and Gemini, what would that be?
Oh my God. That's a really good question. And I want to do more research regarding that, because uh if we think that Pluto has gone through Libra in the 70s and now Pluto's coming back into Aquarius now since the 1700s, it's definitely uh good to see what happened around that period. And I believe uh Pluto Gemini was probably like the 1800s for sure. Right before, I know Pluto, it was right after the IRS was formed in
Whoa.
Pluto
Oh,
Taurus.
that's Nasera Gisser. So we're going to be relieved of our debt,
Okay.
maybe.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because now we're in that completion phase. Ever since the IRS was founded,
Yeah.
we are in the completion phase, which could also mean they've completed harvesting and extracting all the money that they've needed to extract. So if that overturns that, that would really be amazing. Yeah, I think that's a good way to see it. Revolution. Pluto Gemini to me now may at that time really innovated communication portals and channels, how telecommunications is done. If you think it is a quality of rebirth, and an
Oh,
example of
and
that.
this is when Nikola Tesla was around. Pluto
Okay,
Gemini.
that would make a lot of sense. And currents and AC and DC and different electricities. Pluto and Gemini is bringing to such an extreme, intense expression the word. So it's awakening this deeper sense of enlightenment, which is why it's cool to see what happened during that time, because it would mark like a revolution relative to what people can communicate or what's being suppressed.
What about Mars and Gemini?
I like Mars and Gemini. When if you study the natal charts of certain battle rappers, it's not uncommon to see Mars and Gemini. If you think the aggressive god of war and a sign of communication in a battle where people are spitting like bars and poems at each other aggressively, and Mars and Gemini adds this wit and ingenuity to what you say, where like your words are an actual weapon. And I literally just listened to Ghostface Killer,
Oh,
and
my
he has
friend.
Venus and Mars and Gemini.
Yeah, my friend who she's a music artist who told me about how we activated each other over lifetimes. She has her Mars and Gemini, and
Okay.
she does rap. Like she's a
Right.
musician performer.
That's all. Mars and Geminis who rap very distinctly different than non-Mars and Gemini. They don't have to, there's no time lapse between them thinking of what to say. It's really on the fly and they spit literal daggers. It's really dope because it's like a slick talk in a way, but now also, whereas I have like Mars and Aries, and I'm going to act instinctually without thinking, they have the capacity to think about what they're doing while they're doing. So it's literally enlightened actions that one they're taking.
Mm.
Yeah.
What about Neptune and Gemini?
Neptune and Gemini, I can only imagine. Once again, that the last time we've had something like that was like, yeah, like probably in the early 1900s. So Neptune and Gemini is going to transcend once again the brain function. Virgo is more analytical, but Neptune and Gemini is going to really now transcend one's thoughts and thinking to think things that aren't necessarily physical or real. So it's like you could have um taken a cookie out the cookie jar, and if I had Neptune and Gemini, I would start thinking like, wow, wouldn't that be crazy if you like stole a cookie right now? And I don't have any necessary, I didn't induce that or analyze that inductively or deductively. It was just a thought I had, which now suggests that I psychically picked that up uh metaphysically. And once again, that'd be interesting to see what happened in history because uh all of this builds up by the time we were born with Neptune and Capricorn. It's integrated their psychic ability to bring us to that level. Just super dope.
Okay, I had something. What is your Myers-Briggs?
I think, okay, so when I did the test originally, INFP, but
Mhm.
I think I switched from INFP to INFT.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that I am an INFJ or an ENFJ. So it just
Sorry. I meant to say INFP to INTP. Yeah.
INTP. Cool.
Because you definitely got the judger. I'm definitely more a perceiver for
Would you
sure.
say judge
Instead of, I know you said you have the J's at the end of both, but yeah, I definitely, I
perceiver?
yeah. And you
Okay.
said INFJ
Yeah, or an ENFJ. It
or
switches.
ENFJ. Okay, between E and I. Yeah. That's
I
a,
definitely resonate more with the I because it's really hard for me to get out of the house. I have Cancer in the fourth house, so it's like Cancer in the third and fourth under equal.
okay. You
Gosh,
definitely look like the E, but I can see how you feel like the I.
cool.
Yeah.
What about Uranus and Gemini?
Okay, that one is very exciting to me because um I want President Trump in office because when Uranus returns, he's gonna have the Uranus return in office, and that would be a stark contrast to, let's say, Biden's sun in Scorpio, right? And I'm just curious what would happen because Uranus and Gemini to me is quite literally innovating thought. And it coming back is, if you think Jupiter is expanding the thought channel
Mm,
and Uranus is going to now innovate that thought channel. It's like when Uranus goes through, if we're on average thinking like 100 thoughts a minute, Uranus is innovating this to where we're processing like 5,000 thoughts a minute. And if our thoughts aren't expanded to handle that capacity, it's like our brains will short circuit. And what's that going to look like? Technology through Uranus and Taurus has already been patented where you can put stuff on your head and it reads your brain signals and you can literally move stuff with your mind instead of touching the pad. So that's what Uranus and Gemini is going to bring out. And it's literally
Matilda.
kind right all around the brain and just also claircognizant ideas as well, like coming into flash insights relative to what you think. I think it gives one the ability to sense the future, which is why, once again, someone like President Trump, or I think even Rudy Giuliani has Sun Uranus, like people born in that generation. Yeah, I'm excited for that. The children being born with that's going to be wild.
Wow, yeah. My stepdaughter, she has her Venus in Gemini. So wait, let's do Venus in Gemini. What would you say about that? She, I'm like, girl, you better. I know you're little. I won't say the word, but like I have some words to say about her. And then she also has manifested twins as her friends.
Yeah, I noticed that. That's crazy. That type of stuff really trips me out.
Yeah.
There is a magic. So Venus and Gemini, if anyone born with Venus and Gemini has the heart of an angel. That's the first thing to really kind of, and having a magic heart like Venus and Virgo, Sag, Pisces, those are handled a little differently because now it can, based on what they just decide to love, it produces a magical effect or it creates some kind of magic happening. So um my Venus and Taurus has progressed there, and the stubborn quality of, being more loyal or whatnot. Gemini gives it brevity. So Venus in Gemini is going to be a lot more detached to the concept of love versus maybe like a Venus Scorpio or a Venus Aries that might be very passionate towards it. It's going to make sense. Love that makes sense is going to let me talk to multiple people so that through that I get to, know more
Whoa.
people. And then if I find one out of them, I can. It could be seen as, if they don't have integrity, it can be seen as just kind of talking around or whatnot. But the way to the Venus and Gemini's heart is to sapiosexual mental stimulation. If you
I
can really,
love that you said house too.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a really good one. It's literally like adding. I think the people with those are really good at poetry because they
Mm,
can it's so beautiful.
cool. Oh, I can't now he's slipping out of my mind, but Dorian Gray, the author who wrote that, the portrait of Dorian Gray. Anyways, I'm sure he was a Gemini. I love poetry.
Who's Dorian Gray?
It's a book that this guy wrote.
Okay.
And then what about the sun in Gemini?
Sun in Gemini is uh the spirit of an angel, the spirit of truth. It is the word where Sagittarius would be the meaning of the word in the dictionary. So it represents conscious awareness and enlightenment in the sense where through that duality you can choose to tell the truth or a lie. And if the sun is consciousness, it applies the consciousness of Aries of who I am, of Taurus of what I have, and then in Gemini this is not only consciousness of thinking, but now through this awareness portal, um using thoughts or activating thoughts in order to craft magic.
Okay, so this is a question I asked to Sensei. What is knowing? Like, what would that state of awareness be?
I love that. I love that you asked that. It took me a while to get that too. Gemini is the word bender. Knowing is Aquarian.
Mm.
That's why Libra is very central to me because it is the bridge between both. Everything that you communicate in Gemini and Wordbend comes from a source of knowledge, the mind, which is Aquarius, the mind of God, which speaks now Gemini, the word of God. And then you could say Libra is the voice, but it depends. Maybe if it's another, so maybe even something bigger than that.
So that's like first, fifth, 10th house for Gemini.
Oh, yes, ninth, first, fifth, ninth.
Okay, first, fifth, ninth. Okay, what about Jupiter and Gemini? Because that's what we're
Right.
doing
Jupiter in
next.
Gemini brings expansion. When Jupiter was 29 degrees Gemini for me, that's when I realized I'm the peace dealer because it was in my first house of identity. So the best way I can explain Jupiter in Gemini is pre-Jupiter and Gemini, having an average vocabulary pool, post Jupiter and Gemini, having maximum vocabulary, like the amount of words you use, it's quite literally over 12 years leveling up your brain and what it is you communicate, but it's just also really chaotic because it's expanding the truth in a way that could be twisted for deceit, but really, brings to the next level discourse and conversation.
Do you feel that we're going to see a lot of the deceivers come out during Pluto retrograding into Capricorn?
That's a really good question. It's very possible that could be taken anyways. It could give them a time to re-strategize. What that feels like to me is like someone who moved out of a corporate office coming back to collect their stuff. They moved everything out, but there's a few things they left behind. But it could definitely mean that. Now, we would also have to keep in mind that Neptune will also be sextiling it near the end of Pisces, and anything kind of like squaring it could put it in check. But that's very significant because that's the last time it'll ever go in Cap, and then it's just all out revolution.
Yeah. I what I've come into recently, because I've just started really opening up to share my gifts, is like all these years I've been seeing and silently judging the deceivers. Like I was like, what are these people doing? What are they talking about? But only now am I willing to, I can't stop making content because I've had a few different people, teachers, Yeshua came through, and they're like, you have to start putting yourself out there, come out to everyone. I literally have a
Nice.
newsletter that I had to get AI to help me write. And then I just sent it to my whole subscriber list because it's like, if I help one person out of that and everyone else unfollows me, that's what I needed to experience. And that person can come into their light.
Nice. No, that's awesome.
But also I'm seeing the deceivers kind of quiet down because it's like I've been watching them like WTF. And now that I'm starting to make stuff, it's like I see them less on my newsfeed. I see them, kind of like, talking about spirituality rather than trying to be spiritual. And it's like, yeah,
Right.
I love the meme that you made. It was like Leonardo DiCaprio saying, whenever these people come out and then their business practices are exposed, they're converted to
The
Christianity or in
Christianity, yeah,
virtue.
yeah. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. And oh my God, like I I always give the benefit of the doubt. I always like to believe, well, maybe they genuinely switched, but you never know these days. You never
And that's
know.
what I'm wondering too, because it's like, what if these people really, want to be spiritual and they're not really deceiving people out of like their soul. They just have karma from a past life where they did it and now they need to burn out all that energy of the feelings of being like, I know this is wrong, but I have to post it to retain power. Because I'm like, where does that urge even come from to deceive people?
I mean, it could be a past life for certain people. That's could be a way they unconsciously like project that. Um, I I kind of believe it's people whispering in their ear, judging them. There's a way somebody can gain conviction, and if they don't necessarily know the history behind, how the Bible was written, certain of these themes, it's very easy to be deceived. So I really do believe I could easily see someone like her and all these people converting, being told what they're doing is evil, and the people who are telling them may also not be aware that they could probably truly believe it too. But thankfully, I've with just doing that due diligence, being led to the truth and not being triggered when because when I first learned this went against what I believed. But I had to ask myself, do I want to do what's comfortable with me, or do I want the truth? And you kind of learn more every day. But yeah, we'll see.
Okay, Mercury and Gemini.
Oh yes, Quicksilver, the rulership. To me, that's like your brain processing at a dual core processing speed. So I have Mercury in Taurus, and that allows me to slow down my processing and enunciate my words. But Mercury and Gemini is very fast, and it can process information really quick. And I can do this while I'm talking here, and also multitask. And it's very underrated.
I think you're speaking about Chris Reck of Minnow Tarot because he's a 5-degree Pisces sun and Gemini moon. And he speaks so fast. And he's like, I watch everything on YouTube on triple speed. And someone commented, it sounds like you speak in triple speed too. But this man, he has so much Serapis Bay energy. Like he's motivated me to put that masculine structure into my feminine creation. And he's just such a light. I don't know if you're
You
like,
said 5-degree Pisces sun.
yes.
That's 4 away from Gabriel. He's pretty much like Angel Gabriel in a way, at least a conduit. Yeah, that's really awesome.
I met him at Unite the Light, which I hope next year you were keynoting. It's going to be in Tennessee
Oh, nice.
here.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
I think
awesome.
that Sensei is moving along the belt of where Bible Belt because he knows that the church needs a replacement. They're due for a replacement. And
Yeah.
also that ecliptic line.
Okay, that's
Okay.
awesome.
Moon and Gemini.
Those are the angel souls. So those are vessels of truth. And whereas Mercury and Gemini will denote high intellect. My youngest sister actually has 29 degrees and she graduated with a 4.0 in honors. The moon in Gemini now gives one an understanding of truth and beyond just the logical brain function of, breaking down words, it can hear the vocal nuance of what's being said and it now makes them lie detectors because now someone with the moon in Gemini could have no idea what theoretical physics is. They have no idea about chemistry, right? But they're talking to a chemist, and the chemist says something that's a lie, and that moon in Gemini feels it's a lie. They may not have the details as to why, but they'll be able to feel it without even knowing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, Saturn and Gemini.
Saturn in Gemini is now so much integrity of the word that your word is law. So it's a karmic lesson of not just, not being a liar, but and when I experienced this, it blew my goddamn mind. I spoke to a Sagittarius sun born in the new generation. I think he was born literally like 2001, where Jupiter Saturn was in Gemini, but he also had Gemini rising and North Node in Gemini. So, he spoke my language. We were speaking on the phone, and like I was talking with his brother, who's a Virgo, and like a Sag Moon. And talking with him, he was talking a lot of Virgo stuff, which was very practical and very helpful. But like the crazy Gemini stuff, I couldn't really talk to him. It's like he wasn't really on that wavelength because he was telling me realer stuff, like more practical stuff. His brother, he was speaking my language, like he knew exactly what I was saying and everything. And the thing that he taught me about Saturn Gemini, right,
Mm.
is everything in one conversation in like a couple sentences. He took the entire stream of everything that I've been thinking over the past 2 years and he crystallized it together and condensed it in sentence format. And it's like, wow, you literally just put it into words. And that's what helped me realize it's focus and integrity.
What would you say? Because I feel that Saturn is the ruler of money, time, banking.
Yeah.
Has it ascended? Can the planet of Saturn ascend and come into a higher octave? I've heard
That's
that Venus did from one spiritual, she's a high priestess Virgo,
right.
Sandra Walter. She spoke to Venus going through sort of like that Persephone journey of going through the underworld, and now she's really bright. Can Saturn ascend as well? And is it a gas cloud? Or I read something about like Saturn being able to fit into a lake as far as its like particles and the
Hmm.
density of the actual planet.
I know Uranus and Neptune are gas. I guess Saturn might be a gas giant. I'm not entirely sure.
Research.
But yeah, that's a really good question. I do like the whole notion that planets are conscious, like we're conscious. They're like God consciousnesses or with certain rulership and domain. So I would like to believe that Saturn could ascend. In fact, we can say it ascends when it goes through Sagittarius, and now that it's in Pisces, it's transcending. It's currently bringing an end to that cycle relative to its revolution or orbit around the sun. So, yeah, if anything, I think the old era brought about over the past 30, 60, and 90 years is done.
369, of course,
Yeah.
Tesla at it again.
Yeah.
I met someone at Unite the Light that said that Tesla has become her spiritual mentor. Like he's one of her soul clique. So he's been advising her.
That's what's up. I'm glad you're kind of mentioning that element of things too, because I could be I'm getting a bit more skeptical about as far as like mediumship things and who really channels spirits, but the proof definitely smacks you in the face. And it's sometimes right in your face there, which has also humbled me as far as like, okay, there is a real credence for this. So I just like, I think with this Gemini energy, like compared to the last 12 years and 24 years, there's so much more of an openness to talk freely about this, to talk about, you know, metaphysical concepts and entities that we can integrate into our conversations, and in ways that don't allow frauds and people who are delusional to use that to play victim, right? Like, oh, I'm being
Yeah.
psychically attacked, versus someone who's able to really communicate what's happening with that.
Well, I see that as Uranus in Gemini's 12th house, and then Pluto in Aquarius, which would be the 5th house of Aquarius, right? Yeah.
As a Libra, yeah.
Okay. Hey, that's me.
Right. If Pluto in the fifth house would mean that would be like Libra rising.
Okay, Libra rising. I don't. Oh, I think my other stepdaughter, she's a Libra rising. So,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
yeah, it's interesting to see how this is literally translating into reality. What would you say about Black Moon Lilith in Gemini?
You know, I met someone who has Lilith in Gemini, and she was on Playboy. She's
Mhm.
also a Gemini too. Lilith in Gemini is definitely erotic. I mean, Lilith in itself is very erotic. So there is, you're applying ingenuity and wit to where now even someone who is fully clothed and isn't necessarily being overly sexual can stir those feelings up in a conversation. The nuance of what's being said, how raunchy or even if classy it is being said. And that one, I feel, because of how Lilith is treated in society, is going to be a lot more rebellious. Where Lilith, Lilith, first of all, if the rumors are true, like preferring to be on top and not having a man be on top, this is reflected in communication. Lilith and Gemini women in particular talk back, especially to higher authority and men. They're not going to be afraid to kind of speak on things that a woman shouldn't say or is taboo. Like they're gonna share the suggestive memes that are very sexual and can relay that too. But yeah.
I have to see my sister's charts. I've shared this with you. I have twin sister Geminis with Scorpio risings. And like literally my sister's bio, she started doing like, OnlyFans stuff. And she's like, want to go to Pluto? And I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah, that shit blows my mind
I'm like,
too.
I didn't know she was into astrology, but okay, cool.
Right.
She would know. What about Earth and Gemini? So this is from Sensei Christopher Witecki. He says when the sun is in one sign, the Earth is in another.
Yeah, so I want to look into that. Like it is opposite because of course we're looking at it geocentrically with the sun sign as it rather. So I don't know. To be honest, like I want to kind of I can imagine Earth and Gemini would of course have, characteristics of Gemini, but I want to see what the Earth as an archetype is. Like
Mhm.
we know how Pluto would be like awakening and Saturn would be like karma. So I never really looked into what the Earth sign is. And I'm gonna kind of spin the block and kind of talk on into that. If anything, thank you for inspiring me to do that.
Yeah.
And of course, every Sagittarius season, the Earth would be in Gemini,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and there's that new moon happening on June 6th. So before I ask about a few more, what would you say is a good ritual or ceremony for this upcoming new moon, June 6th?
Well, the full moon, we're creating new words, we're creating magic words. So, the best ritual I could really,
And you'll have one of these on your channel, right? On
oh
YouTube, so
yeah,
people can go watch
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, and it could be like a time capsule. If you watch it later, it'll still definitely apply. So, what are we doing? New Moon in Gemini is activating a new idea, new truth, the new word. So I would anchor a bunch of images, beliefs, and symbols into a word and just say that word over and over. Or, you could be in the forest practicing your Wingardium Leviosa and just repeat it over and over as you integrate it. Or even if you say it once, then you move forward knowing that the word has already been said. That's also a way to do it, to just kind of respect that word. But it's literally that simple. I kind of want to highlight its simplicity. because this is now an effect being produced, you really just want to shape your attitude and mindset towards what new thoughts you want to say. And now, if there's any way you can take the word stacked with that meaning and integrate it into your vocabulary, say it, while you're communicating, and find ways to, incorporate it, that's going to add to its magic.
Cool. What about Juno in Gemini?
That's a good question. So, Juno in Gemini is going to represent relating with people and committing to people who are openly communicative.
Cool.
So if you're with a partner that doesn't necessarily like it when you speak your mind or doesn't like to communicate, it's going to be hard to commit to that person. Their ideal of marriage is one of free expression. And it definitely opens up a lot of, like, I would say, ideas that might not be strictly traditional.
Hmm. What about ascendant in Gemini? So Gemini in the first house.
Gemini suns are angel spirits, Gemini moons are angel souls, and then Gemini risings are the embodiment of angels or angelic beings. So if a Gemini moon is an angel soul, a Gemini rising is an angelic being.
Yeah, I mean, it's
In the
kind of
truth.
sad, sorry to interrupt you. What'd you
No,
say?
that was it. No, instrument of truth. That's all.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of, I'm a stepmom and I've never given birth before, but my little angel princess, Moana, she would give me flowers all the time and I would literally just put them down and put them away. So that was telling you my connection to the angels at that time. Once I realized what I was doing, I was like, she's giving me flowers like literally all the time. And I've been for years before I met them. She was actually the first one who I met of everyone. Before I met my husband, I met her through my friend Shakina, who
Yeah.
activated me with light language recently. And it's just one of those things where it's like we might conceive that we're doing the right things and we're filling all the forms, we're showing up, we're serving in our spiritual mission. But when it comes down to it, the angels are like loving us 100%, and like we can just so discard them. So yeah, I had to like reel myself in and be like, okay, let's put these flowers on the altar, let's make some space and really thank her and show her that she can't shut down this angelic light no matter what's coming at her.
Amen to that.
Yeah. What about part of fortune in Gemini? Because that's me.
That's a good question. I want to look more to the parts of fortune because I have experienced it as a point of fortune. Um, and my experience of that is mine that I have in Libra, and I actually have it in the sixth house.
Oh my
So,
gosh. Mine's
right.
in
So
the third house.
interesting. So the
And
way, oh, please go ahead.
yeah, Robbie Hunt, she's a metaphysical minister,
Uh,
22-degree Aquarius sun, badass. She's actually spoke to lots, being a lot more um predictive or like, they
okay.
can lead you more into what you want to know about you know, what's the term for predicting small events, like when you should buy a car or when
Oh,
you
like to transits towards there too. Okay.
yeah.
I've noticed that with the vertex as well. And
I
I
was
would
gonna ask you about Vertex next. Vertex
vertex is
in
going to be more
Gemini.
fate. So like the lot of fortune or the powers of fortune is, going to bring, I think, especially where you have it, being in a position to speak your mind and to just express your ideas will add fortune, bring fortune, influence it. But with the vertex there, it adds an element of fate. And that's what I want to kind of research more how that works. But I know from experience, like when Mars was transiting my vertex to the degree, that was when I became aware of somebody who actually had like their north node on that degree or something like that. Like you can time transits towards there, which I think in Gemini would be triggered around ideas you might have, epiphanies that might occur, key things being said, especially in your third.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I think we're ready for the next question. What is an example of when astrology severely impacted your life? Like you
Oh
had
my God.
something major happen with astrology.
Um, uh, when I was getting jumped viciously by the planets, they were just like mind-blowing realizations and synchronicities that continually uplifted me out of old frameworks of thinking and belief before I had the time to really adjust my mind around it. Then I get viciously beat again. And so it's hard to really pick one moment,
Yeah.
but I would say once I really kicked in the knowledge of like the cycles, because at first it was, trying looking at it like it was cookie cutter, like, oh, this sign is in this sign, so that means this, and if you have this. But once you kind of now understand what was it aspecting when it happened, what angle is it towards this, that just added so much more depth to what I guess was a black and white perspective that it really kicked into gear. For example, the insurrection and the riots. Like I knew, just knowing that Mars was going to enter Taurus on that day on Uranus, I knew without a doubt we were going to experience what we experienced. And that helped solidify uh tropical versus sidereal, because yeah, you can argue it would still happen in Aries, but the shift in the Taurus was very pronounced. And on top of that, I had drawn a tarot card that had the Ten of Swords, and I was able to predict someone's gonna die that day, and that's exactly what happened. So that, moments like that really helped tie in together the predictable, consistent nature of this, which
Mhm.
is still open for interpretation.
Okay, so I have to ask, what does the constellation of Aldebaran mean to you personally and in your practice? Because I recently did a transmission with Steve Nobel over Aldebaran and 6D abundance, and I woke up thick-lidded, like I could hardly move around because I feel like it settled into my being, this concept of just the plethora of what's possible when we're moving from our heart.
Absolutely. Aldebaran has been such a blessing as far as realization, and it introduced me to the core of vessel spirits and instruments that, is sponsored by this. I've met a Gemini moon who has his moon right on that Aldebaran point, and he understands himself as Archangel Michael, as Mikael. I've met someone with their rising there, and it kind of unites that concept through us. And brings this point of identification where we are all that one body and expression of that concept, which is just so fascinating. And knowing how it stands in relation to Antares and the other archangel stars is really dope.
Okay, can you explain what the difference is between the archangels and the Nephilim?
Oh, yeah, sure. Archangels are chief angels. So you have the archangel, and then you have archangels as far as like a position. Archangels, of course, will have their position relative to like thrones, powers, and whatnot. But the distinct quality of them is that archangels are, of course, from God. They're emanations of God, chief angels that command stations and orders for other angels, right?
Mm.
Respective to their position relative to seraphims and whatnot. Nephilim are a product between the fallen angels and humankind. So the fallen angels had lost their grace. They still had the power, but the grace that had made them angels, they had fallen from that grace. So when they had mated with the humans that were created by God, this is what created these giants and infusing that. And that's what led to the flood in order to wash them away. Or some people may feel they're sealed in mountains or whatnot, but
Yeah, I've heard that their vibration is like now moving really slow. And I feel, okay, so I've heard a few things that there are planets that have sun exposure 24 hours a day, and that's speaking to the love of God. And then nighttime is a time where we're unconscious, and it shows our lack of ability to connect with creation, with God, with the Vesca Pisces, that fish symbol that's Christ. Um, I don't know where I was going with this. Do you have any thoughts on what I just said?
well, the moon does represent that, the intuitive and the subconscious. And I do feel like a lot of myths, a lot of religions are based off of the myth of the sun and the moon, like like Horus and Set, you know what I mean? So the sun is going to, if you think in most cases of most people who worship the sun as well and the light, this entire planet would be nothing without the sunlight. It's entirely, our calendar system is entirely based on the sunlight. So it makes sense why it's been worshipped by so many people. And I think the night reflects the space in which we get to reflect and also cool off from that heat and really face what's hidden, so that we can bring that to light as well.
I've heard also from Sandra Walter, the Virgo High Priestess, that Gaia will eventually become a spiritual sun. And I'm not very versed on Sirius and like the star system that the Pleiadians came through, but I live on Maui, and this mana deck, our mana card deck, it was written by an anthropologist who says that the Hawaiians are Pleiadians. So it's like the same concept or the same consciousness that Christ came from. And the Hawaiians that I meet, they're just the most amazing real people that I've ever met in my lifetime.
Wow. I have to look into that. I didn't
Yeah.
even know
And Elon
Palladium.
Musk, he has his moon on the galactic center or on Sirius, 14 degrees. So what Sensei said is that he brought technology to Earth to help humanity. But one thing that I've listened to a podcast, he was interviewed by Lex Freeman, and he said that the Hawaiian Islands are the easiest launching into space. And this card deck said that that's where the Pleiadians entered Earth, is through the Hawaiian Islands.
Wow.
And I've heard that souls enter Earth through Kauai, like they come in through that exact portal. And Pohaku, this phallic stone that you can go and get pregnant if you go touch it. My husband and I celebrated our honeymoon there. I'm waiting until Jupiter goes into Cancer for all of that. But like there was this green crystal that we saw there, and I was going to leave it. And my husband was like, "Go take that." So I took it, and I think I gift. It's like in our, on our property somewhere. But how do you feel about crystal consciousness and like Andaras? Do you have any?
And Dars, I'm not familiar with, but
They come from Sedona.
is it a type of crystal?
It's like this is my it's called
Oh,
like
wow.
ice or something, but it's
Yeah.
basically, I feel that it's light in the most dense form that it could be.
Yeah. That crystals are something that I've never known how to practically apply. And I was very skeptical of too, especially because of the predatory practices of people just kind of, making stuff up.
Right.
But that's another thing that kind of humbled me as far as like knowing the frequencies, or rather how to utilize said frequencies. And it helped me kind of want to approach the knowledge of that deeper, because I'm not familiar with what each stone represents, but I
Mhm.
kind of want to learn how they come to that conclusion, how that's known, because I really do feel there is an untapped potential there as far as like how we can integrate that more too. But yeah, I'm pretty much a newbie when it comes to that.
Have you what's the most spiritual location that you've been to, and do you study astrocartography at all?
I I don't necessarily practice it, but I have seen evidence and results of it. But enough to just open the door for me. I want to definitely explore more, like how that necessarily works. Personally, I think there is a metaphysical aspect that aligns, right? Like I might just coincidentally decide to go somewhere right when it's aligned with that. And I think that kind of adds more of a connection of how we don't have to be aware, but we're aware. But I I need to travel more. I've been to Sedona before, but I haven't been anywhere that strikes me as like exceptionally spiritual. But I haven't traveled to many places too. So
Cool. Okay, another question. And then I don't want to, let me know when you have to go, because I feel like I could just continue asking you questions until I like have, no more breath. But can you describe a time when you felt the strongest connection to Archangel Michael?
oh yeah. Oh my goodness. There's been like very key moments where I think because once again, like really unlearning so much and uh feeling like it was during periods where I feel like I needed more proof than I needed. Like I need this sign, or and not even like I need a sign. Like certain things aren't logical to me. So these are experiences that were just so in my face that it's very hard to deny. And I would say Michael has been a very profound element of astrological discoveries and being able to tie in placements and angles with real life events, with it being reflected through real people. But yeah, I remember when I was in California, and two people that I had met that night, and then my friend earlier that morning, within that 24-hour span, within that 12-hour span, they had both made it a point to tell me, the first thing they say when they tell me is, I saw your angel form. And that's something that, like, I would have probably um not taken serious if it just happened once, but then it happened back to back. And then this happened again during two cosmic energy tune-ups that were booked back to back, which is an anomaly. Like, that never happens. And they both made it a point to say, hey, I looked at your energy and it's huge. Like, I saw your angel form. And that really helped. Periods like that helped me realize, okay, the angels exist. This isn't necessarily just like the guidance of that does exist in a way. Even when he came to visit me through the vessel of my late friend's son, we walked around my apartment. He was talking to me about how, the difference between Armon and Lucifer, and how Lucifer be hating, and in fact be careful because you should move from your apartment. He'd watch you. And as we're coming back into the apartment, there's a man walking into the apartment in front of us with a tarot card on the back of his shirt, and it's the devil card. And we just look at each other like, see? He's just like, see, this is what I'm talking to you about. So just like that real presence there, and just learning to peel the layers back and be more aware of that eternal presence, which is just fascinating.
Yeah, just to reveal the truth whenever it's like, we need a sign. Um, that also strikes me as something that where I'm like ley lines. And that's where, for me, astrocartography speaks, because when I was in Vegas, my mom and I were waking up at 3 a.m. and I was like, I feel like there's just a ley line here that's waking us up, because it's beyond circadian rhythm. The sun, there's so much light pollution in Vegas,
Yeah.
that it's like, it's not even circadian rhythm. It's just like this pulse that's surging.
That's amazing because that the person who I was just talking about, his late mother was the first person to ever introduce, and she was also a Gemini with the Aqua Moon. She was the first person to introduce the concept of ley lines to me. Like, I didn't know what those were before, and we had met upon them in El Paso and like moving towards there. But I would have to do research. I don't know where the ley lines are, but that would definitely be something to look into and visit and
Well,
do.
and for me, it's um interesting because I planted some Andaras before these eclipses, before solar and lunar eclipse of, they both happened, I think, at some point this year. Sorry, I can't give you the exact info and like wordage, but then I saw that along the disaster that happened in Kula and Lahaina, the Hawaiian poppy is sprouting on its own. Like, and I planted a Andara up in Haleakala, which is the ancestor. It's considered the island within the island of Maui. And Haleakala and this other Iao Valley, they're really sacred to Hawaiians. So it's just interesting to see that potentially ley lines can be mediated with crystals and with that crystalline consciousness.
Someone had mentioned organite too.
What's that?
Organite, I have no idea, but I think it's a type of, I don't know if it's just a crystal, but they wire certain things with the crystal that adds to the frequency, and apparently it has some people use it to like jam frequencies being projected, but once again, I'd have to really research more into that.
Yes. Okay.
Orgone crystals,
What'd you say?
think they're orgone crystals, and they make organite out of them.
Okay. Okay. I'll have to just pick one up and see how it works.
Yeah.
So what is this new strategy that you're using with the degrees where you're like, this is in 180-degree aspect and 320-degree aspect is something that you're sharing that's new?
Yeah.
When did you download this, and like what has it been allowing for you to do?
Well, ironically, and I love that you say it's new because nobody really talks about it like that, but actually this is the foundational astrology. So it's really, I would say, as old as astrology, but yeah, before I did that, right? Um, I would be accurate, but after I do this, now I'm precise, like to the minute, to the day. Um, I think it was, I know part of it in learning astropsychology through this course with Glenn Perry, it helped me kind of be familiar with perspectives and understanding more of the archetypes and psychology of the signs. But I think once I was looking more into aspects, and I was skeptical at first. I didn't believe that aspects and angles could carry the archetype of the sign. I thought the zodiac sign was the zodiac sign, but the archetypes are a bit different. But once I realized oppositions, 180-degree oppositions, do not only bring the Libra signature, but once I learned the phases of the aspects, everything started to look eerily clear. Like once you kind of learn, and it was with the new and full moon, and then you're able to apply that with planetary cycles, and that started to show me the history of old events to the point where now everything is super predictable because it's literally written in the stars, and the cycles are it's literally like being able to read the screenwriter play of when what's going to happen if you know the archetypes of what's being seen, who on earth plays out through these archetypes. So in learning, of course, the 12 signs, each sign has affixed to it a degree. Aries is 0 degrees, Libra is 180 degrees, Cancer is 90 degrees, Capricorn's 270 degrees. Now, the faster moving planet is going to make the angle to the slower moving luminary planet. So like the moon in Virgo, while the sun is in Aries, is going to be the Virgo signature 100 and say 50 degrees. And when you understand 0 to 90 is activating the cycle, 90 to 180 is integrating the cycle, the seed sown break through the ground, 180 to 270 is harvesting the cycle, and then 270 back to 360 or zero is completing the cycle. Everything is clear.
This is with the
Everything is clear.
moon.
So I started with the moon and the sun, but you
Mhm.
could do this with Mercury and the moon, Mercury and the sun, Mercury and Uranus, Uranus and Pluto. One project I'm going to do is I'm going to detail the Saturn Pluto cycle of the institution of the state of Israel and all the conflict with Palestine. Because when you see how that 30-year Saturn cycle goes through,
Yeah.
it'll spell it out like why it's been going on like that, and you'll be able to tell what's going to happen too, which is pretty cool.
So I met one woman at the Unite the Light conference. She was my takeaway from the entire experience because it was just her and I. She's a 29-degree Leo sun, and I didn't get her name. But she's a fan of a subscriber of yours, and I hope that she can like see this and share or like share something. But she is Lebanese and Jewish, I believe, and she
Oh,
told
nice.
me that the Basque people are the children of Israel, and that they haven't compromised their language. As we know, English came from Germanic, which came from that, which came from this, which came from that, and every other
Yeah.
language on earth, which I believe when we speak, it's activating the Holy Spirit or not. Like if you're not open and aware of the channel that we are, it's like,
So the language you're speaking is like watered down version of the spirit, basically.
mhm,
I like that. I believe that. That's what's up. And
cool.
she speaks like that original language.
Well, she was able to share that with me because she's not a Basque person, but she was
Okay.
telling me that these are the children. Um,
And I learned the distinction between the children of Israel versus the descendants of Judah,
mhm.
which is also very interesting too.
Yeah. And I was guided to read the book of, I keep wanting to say the book of Ishmael, but it's the book of Isaiah. And I
Yeah.
sit next to a reverend. This is my experience of working in faith, is running through LAX and making a 15-minute connection before my other flight took off. And I sat next to this professor of theology, reverend. This man was amazing. 76-year-old, still works in construction. He had the scars to prove it, but he delivered all 5 of his children. And he was sharing with me just various insights that were like confirming every single thing. Like he said, if this plane were to crash with my love of astrology, who would greet me at heaven? You know, would I be locked out? And I'm like, Jesus is going to greet me at the gates. And he went to kind of say something. And I was like, I just told you, like, that was my natural response, is that I'll be greeted by Jesus. Well, you believe that the gates are locked. Like, you know, it's like this breaking through of these paradigms and this indoctrination
Yeah.
we've been.
And the semantics too, where people want you to say it the way it has to be said. And if they have anything against Jesus or the concept of that or whatnot, it can get in the way of the truth of what you said.
Yeah, I think that at the end he was trying to get me to like open up my heart to Jesus, but I was like, I got baptized at 11 on my own, and my parents were so mad at me. They were like, "Why did you do that?" And you know, this, that, and the other. But I was going to church with anyone who I could, anyone who would take me. So my art teacher, one of my
Wow.
friends who is Christian, like I just had to go to this specific church, and I love it. I still consider it my home church, and I don't
Right.
necessarily consider myself a church goer anymore,
Right.
but it's something to where I'll like take the girls for a Christmas thing, or we did an Easter egg hunt so that they can be around the experience of knowing Christ.
Which the church is, which is the universal uh core of people who believe and align with the truth versus like a physical place. The bride of Christ.
You said the bride of Christ.
That's the church.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so see, the Catholicism is like an infiltrator of the faith. So the whole notion that church is a physical place where you go to is a myth. In order to take away like the
Thank you. Thank
church is right, like people who actually walk the faith and align with truth, we are all one body. That's what the church is universally. That's the bride of Christ when you become born again.
Like I have some ideas that just peek through the clouds and you just actually verbalized it. Something that it didn't quite come through. And I was like, what was that? Okay, goodbye. And now you're like, this is exactly what it is. We're all the body, we form the body of the church. There's not a physical
Right.
location on the map.
I mean, there's a reason, there could be a purpose for it. Like there's a reason why they congregated physically, but that's not what makes the church basically. It's like you were saying, congregation.
So,
But
okay, sorry, my brain is like, what would you say? Because I think this is going to be a funny question. What would you say to someone who's just learning their sun, moon, and rising sign?
oh, that's a really good
What placement would someone like that have? Like Chiron and Gemini, or
for someone
Sag,
who's just
Sag?
learning.
Yeah, someone who doesn't know it.
Oh, that could be any placement.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, it's a really good question. I mean, Chiron and Gemini and Sag might have a proclivity to learn it quicker or more
Mm.
it's through experience. But yeah, I mean, um, the best thing, that's a really good question. If you just learned it. All right. The best thing I would learn is the relationship between once you know your rising sign, learn the relationship between your sun and moon, what angle and signature it makes, and how that plays out based on your rising. So you would start with the sun and moon, and then once you're familiar with that, bring the rising as an extra layer that you put that on top of, and that'll let you know where it plays out. And that I know if you're just starting, that might not make the most sense, but
Yeah, it feels like it's human design. It's like over my head. And I want, it's going to, this is my new affirmation. I will allow for it to be revealed to me, the truth of what you're saying in the coming days.
absolutely. Oh, that's beautiful. That's the form of it too. But I would start with the angle. Start with the angle of the sun and moon. And yeah, how many degrees is your moon from your sun? And learn the signature and how you express it through your awareness and soul.
So mine is like if you just look at the number, it's 4 degrees. My sun is 9 degrees Libra, and then my moon is 27. No, wait, my moon is 5 degrees Leo
Leo, okay, okay. So I in that case, that's
in the
like
fourth house.
in
Sun
the
and Sirius rising.
you said 9 Libra and 5 Leo.
Hmm.
Okay, that's like 4 degrees away from three. That's like 296 degrees. So
Oh, I love that
technically,
number.
technically that's the Capricorn signature, but I feel like you
Interesting.
could round it too. I feel like since it's in the sign of the Aquarius signature, it could kind of low key round. And I'm glad you said that because I mean, I would in researching that, I would ask people like you if it feels blended, like you feel 10th and 11th, or if it feels more like one and the other.
You know what? That's so interesting because that number nets to an 8, which is the Capricorn degree. The Sensei's step system, 296.
Okay, I decide. That's true.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And this
Oh,
is an
the
eight
cap
year.
signature. Yeah. And it's the 8 year. Okay. That's what's up. 2024.
Um, yes. So, how has astrology helped you in your own healing journey?
It's definitely helped me align what's happening in my current experience with the cycles that are affecting us collectively. So instead of working against the current, I'm able to go with that flow. It doesn't necessarily, I have to solve my problems. I have to make my own decisions. But instead of trying to find my way from Florida to California on my own, it is a superior GPS system that saves me a ridiculous amount of time, and it helps me profile people to a haunting level where they think I know them better than they know themselves.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, oh my gosh, GPT chat with the questions. What legacy do you hope to leave behind in the world of astrology?
I want to make sure, whether directly or indirectly, um, the at the earliest level children learn in school that they're being taught this, even if it's to a point where they hate that they're learning it because it's being drilled in there, but by the time they're like 18 or 15 they know it at an advanced level. If you equip children with that knowledge, it'll completely change the world as we know it, and I really have a deep feeling that is why they don't, the whatever forces that legislate this or spread that, there's a deeper reason why we're being told it's a pseudoscience when that is utter nonsense.
Yeah, I thought the funniest meme that you've had, I think maybe last year, was that you can't wait until people start using the AI detector on NASA's photos.
Oh my
So
god.
funny. And then okay, I can't stop. So, what do you believe is the most misunderstood aspect of astrology? So that could be literally like the study of it or like the degree and the signature.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The most misunderstood aspect of astrology is no one really knows what, a lot of people don't know what it really is. So people approach it like it's a fortune telling device when it's literally space meteorology. Whether due to blatant misinformation or people just pretending to be obtuse, there's a fascination to misunderstand the constellations and the precession of the equinox with the actual zodiac. So now you have astrophysicists who have never read or interpreted a natal chart, who don't have any experience at all interpreting natal charts, telling you that a constellation is a zodiac sign, which is like someone who has never written a periodic table. They've never read a periodic table. They don't know what is on a periodic table, telling you that valence electrons don't exist and that, that was just nonsense. It's just stupid. Whether I'm a biologist, if I'm not familiar with chemistry and I'm telling you that carbon has the atoms it doesn't, you would call me, pretty stupid. And that's what we're seeing. So, because it's not regulated and people can now use astrology to defraud people and make up this pop psychology bullshit, that's the fault of the education system that didn't teach people how to properly use it because
Yeah,
you
and this is what Waldorf does. I worked at a Waldorf school, and Joseph Steiner, he calls this age the age of Archangel Michael. He practices the teaching with astrology, and my school looked at me like I was cuckoo, but I was like, the planets actually affect the high schoolers. Like someone she's a Gemini, of course, and
oh, of course, yeah.
yeah, she spoke to the planets being more effective to the high schoolers, and then the days of the week being the glyphs. So one of my friends who was a teacher, I don't know her star sign, but her sun sign, but she would write the glyph of the day for the students.
Mm,
Okay, so I
that's
just have
awesome.
two questions. Have you heard of Terrence Howard and his theories? The actor
Everyone keeps
from
everyone keeps telling me about him. I don't know what theories he said, but I know I know he did mention, and I did see a clip of him, I think, mentioning or equating like elements to sounds and vibrations and frequencies, which
Mhm.
I mean I can't necessarily doubt. I don't the one times one equaling two,
Mhm.
um that I kind of seen debunked and easily debunked. I think that was like a mistake as far as like mistaking sets of numbers versus the multiplication. But I don't see, I mean, first of all, I don't think I'm in a position to say he's right or wrong. I have to do my own research, but I do like where he was going with that. I think that is true as far as like the frequencies and the vibrations. And I like that he's challenging the status quo of what we've been taught, whether it's all right or wrong, which is an important element of just like,
I think one of his takeaways that I've gotten is the seed of the flower of life, because I've made a little sculpture of it, but essentially it's like if you balloon the drawing of the flower of life to a 3D model, then it's the inside, the innermost part. So it looks like a diamond, but there's no lines. It's just sort of like this, like if I can try and draw it, it's like if you think of the flower of life drawing, and all those circles, it's just like let me go get this thing.
shoo.
And his moon is on the galactic center, but this is my version, very handmade.
Okay.
But I feel that having these and working with this as a concept, it's really powerful. And then also, okay, my last question, if it comes back. Oh, so this woman, she channels Mary Magdalene, which I think she's just more open to exploring the vibrations of truth. She said Yeshua didn't go to the desert for 40 days and 40 nights and fight the devil. He took Blue Lotus and integrated his shadow.
I don't believe that at all. I feel like
Okay.
people just be channeling. But see, here's the thing. I've like someone messaged me on Instagram and they were like, I'm connected to Archangel Michael too, and his name was Michael. And I was like, bullshit in my head. Like I just didn't believe it. And I looked at his chart, and then when I looked at his chart, I saw he had 29-degree Gemini rising, he had Moon, Saturn, Taurus, and it was like, oh, he wasn't lying. And that's what humbled me to the point where, everyone who says they're channeling this or that, not everyone is lying. So,
She's a triple Virgo or like double Virgo, and her chart's crazy. Her Pluto is on my Mars at 20 degrees Libra. And Sensei just today spoke of that being George Washington's placement.
damn.
Yeah.
That was kind of that's interesting to me too, because I've had thoughts about how historical or um what's it, the historicity like of Jesus even going to the it being real versus it just being like an analogy or parable. So that's interesting for the
And
challenge.
you put me on to Neville Goddard, and then there's this woman who I added her to my newsletter list. Her last name is Goddard, and she gave us all like $20,000 in like maybe Indonesian money. And she said that when we go back to the gold as the standard currency, that'll be worth twice its value. And
Wow.
my dad, who has a 29-degree Cancer moon, was like, "No, BS." Like I call it. I'm like, when I saw that last name, I was like, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to make sure that I spend it in abundance when it's time. So, okay, if you want to pull a card, I would like to pull a card. Now I just feel like I felt like I only needed to pull from this angel deck, but um, if you have any intention for sending people off and any projects that you have or ideas, let me know what we're pulling for.
Um, I mean, we're definitely experiencing the winds of change. So I guess the intention would be the proper state of mind set to activate, and what direction should we take, or what insight is best for us to move forward with, or whatever does come up.
Cool.
It's straight acceptance.
Ooh, I have the 4 of air and 3 of earth.
Okay. Oh, okay, nice. I like that.
At the top of the deck is king of fire. Now I have to know what's on the bottom of the deck. Knight of water.
Knight of water, nice. Pisces. I know Eight of Swords is Jupiter, Gemini, but I did get, oh, I split the deck and I also got the Four of Swords, which is beautiful because I got the Nine of Swords. The Nine of Swords is Mars in Gemini, ghost type Pokemon Haunter. Nine of Swords, I mean, we're expanding our mindset, and this can now expand the shadows of anxiety in coming into so much new information and realizing what's possible and immediately thinking negative, dealing with enhanced psychic attack too. But I'm glad we got the Four of Swords because this is speaking of being able to come into that clarity and being able to balance this. And the main card I got is the Magician. So that could induce the anxiety. Like, stepping into the next level of the manifestation of your skills and maybe having imposter syndrome or anxiety about, oh, can I handle this? Can I make this work?
Eight
Eight
of
of
water was in the middle of the deck. So it's like people are
okay.
tired of being fed nonsense and I feel like they want to seek it for themselves, which is
Yeah,
a change.
yeah. Demonstrating it themselves too. Oh, and this was the next card, the Knight of Swords. So I think it's literally what you said. It's like demonstrating those skills and coming into the truth through trial and error, through experimentation, scientific method. Boom.
Very cool.
That's
Michael,
awesome.
I hope we could do this again in the future because, it'll be a year of Jupiter and Gemini. And I'm so happy we did this on Grandmaster 5 degrees Gemini. What a potent container.
And I'd definitely love to invite you on the channel for a peace talk.
That would be so cool. Whoa. Do you have anything that you want to share with people who are watching?
Mm, I would just like to remind you to stay true to yourself, meaning there is nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing outside of yourself, your capabilities, and your skills that you need. Um, Even if it doesn't look like that, you can quite literally out of thin air create what you need, even if you need some time, consistency, and persistence to do so.
All right. Well, you heard it here, folks.
Make
Oh,
magic, my friends.
there we go. Easy bake oven style. All right. Thank you. And see you soon.